Okay, good morning, everybody. It's Jillian, and yeah, busy morning for me because I needed to do a little bit of shopping and get burritos and chicken thighs and balsamic vinegar and some cherries, and I got a coffee too. So I'm a little, buzzy, but not too much and not too little, and so that's good. Yeah, my dog actually did not sleep with me last night. I had one of the blankets, like she loves certain blankets, and the ones that are cooler, that aren't super fuzzy, that's usually made for winter, of course, since it's hot outside, it was down here, and so it was on the couch, and so she slept actually on the couch and stayed down here the whole time, didn't pee in the bed or on the couch. Took her outside after I came back from all my little errands this morning, and she was fine. But she still is moving slow because she has a metallic taste in her mouth, which means that she's dealing with her own predisposed issues. And so when, dogs and animals, they get, I don't say COVID, but they get a version of whatever is out there, and it does affect their predisposed issues. And so she has predisposed issues. I mean, she has scar memories under her belly from all the different surgeries and tumors that she, tumor removals that she underwent before she came to my house. And so she's had her own history prior. She had 4 years of whatever history that was ingrained in her. And now I'm in the process of purging that out, which means that it's just, she has to go through the viral exposure, the frequency exposure, and go through the process. And so if she's shaky on her feet, or she just doesn't have the strength to get up even one step, but she walks around and she's a little, in a little daze because she's got to deal with, like with you guys, when you were sick with COVID, you were in a daze. She still has to go through that. So she'll sleep, she'll eat, she eats and poops, and she goes outside and she knows that stuff, but sometimes her body doesn't allow her to get her out soon enough. And so sometimes she has accidents, and that's okay. Until all that stuff is purged out, I'm not going to worry about trying to be traditional and ingrain something in her that she has no control over right now because she has predisposed issues. Just like all of you, when you get sick with something, you don't want someone putting you down and getting mad at you for not performing, but people do, and they take all their different drugs and they put themselves behind the 8 ball. Well, I'm not going to do that to her. I'm not going to get mad at her for her predisposed issues. I'm not going to put her on a bunch of drugs so she can get back in the game and be my entertainer. No, I'm just going to watch her go through this process and get through each level, because animals go through so much trauma in the veterinary world. Humans go through so much trauma in the medical holistic world. And now it's time to redirect. And so I'm trying to set not only myself free, but all of you free from all these limitations and constraints that were programmed in you ever since day one, and whatever your parents gave to you as far as predisposed issues, and then whatever you compounded on top of that because of you listening to authority, the professionals who were programming you, and also had an interest that you do what they do because there's money involved. People don't give you stuff for free or recommend something to you, especially in the health and wellness industry, where it's not universally the same, unless they have some kind of financial interest that you do it. But you know how people are. They're like, oh, the government's giving me something for free, then it's great, it's going to protect me and all that shit. And really, it's quite the opposite. So it's time you guys realize how the world works, and it's perfect timing. But it's also meant that way because we have every access to the internet and to Google stuff. And then I'll get to that point in a minute. Let me just get to my little list here. And so just give me 1 second, because I want to set even my Jilly Juice writers free, because I don't want anybody worshiping the JJ world. I want them to have new ideas. Yes, reference JJ for a minute, but not like, oh, JJ saved me, but that you did a few waterfalls. Yeah, you were part of the whole crazy stuff in the beginning, and it was good, but then the evolution was difficult, but it was something to take on. And then you realize that you really couldn't rely on the JJ world. You had to really deal with all the predisposed issues and face the different frequencies and viruses that would potentially get in and then cause the body to wake up and go through the processes. And then you are in the process of facing that and also deprogramming from the past and also programming yourself or resetting the programming that will still help society and help you, but it's not going to be where you're going to harm yourself. It's going to be helping yourself and the world around you. And so when I was going through my newsfeed and I saw that they were making synthetic milk, and I'm drinking milk left and right. I mean, I need the amino acids, fatty acids, prohormones, and minerals, and that's in milk, and then also a diverse food supply, which it is for me right now, because the burritos, the chicken thighs, the balsamic vinegar and olive oil, the cherries, and macaroni and cheese, that's like diverse. And so when I go to the grocery store, my food bill is actually really inexpensive, you know, relative to what it was a couple months ago when I was buying all these different types of foods, because I'm feeding all different types of diverse monsters in my body, antibodies and viruses and whatever. And so this last round of COVID plus my co-infection, I released all that diverse programming that forced me to go and be really creative with my food supply. And that's a lot to think about. No different than when you're going shopping for clothes. When you're buying so many different clothes and they're all like fashionable and pretty and all this other stuff, it's an addiction. You're feeding the beast inside because you want to look cute and you want to look up to the times. And then you're forcing yourself and programming yourself to buy new clothes every summer or every winter, to go buy so much different types of food. You have the craving for this food, that food. I mean, everything that people become so habitual in or crave, like traveling and buying food and clothes and buying baubles and making so much money, that's all been programmed in you, and then it runs you, and then it becomes out of control. And then people spend themselves out of existence. Literally, they spend themselves and consume themselves out of existence. No different than those lions that were found in Mexico that were relying on people coming to the sanctuary or donations. And when the donations dried up and the customers or the people dried up because of COVID, the guy that ran the sanctuary just let them starve. And so the animals were actually eating themselves. They were eating their own tail. The lions were eating their own tail. And that's exactly what goes on in your body when you're starving, because you've fed so much of the beast, which is your protective immune system, and fed that, and then it converted things because you took so many antibiotics that were attacking you, and then all the things that were protecting you then became the things that attacked you, and then it started eating you out from the inside. And so essentially you're eating your own tail. You're starving. And so we got to purge that programming. We got to purge all that and reset the programming. And so, but that was all programmed into you, that you consume, buy, programmed to do a job, whatever it is, whether it's selling houses or throwing steel or driving a truck, or I don't know, what was my programming? I have no idea. I have an idea to be basically a trophy wife and who had some kind of intellect. So I finally released all the little demons that were plaguing me, which was the whole trophy wife, sexual programming, and kept the intellect, and then reprogram myself to then buck the fucking system, because I was bucking the system back then. And so when I see people saying, okay, I don't like the fact that we have synthetic milk versus organic milk like you get from a cow. Well, everything that's made in a lab can be made in nature. All you gotta do is just take the components of what's in nature, go and recreate them in a lab, which is really no different, and then sell that on the open market. And it's FDA approved, it's for consumption. People have issues with that. I'm sorry that you feel you need to enslave an animal. And so I understand where the PETA and the vegetarian activists come from, but I don't want to starve, and I have to have specific meals and specific ingredients in my meals so I could be, a whole person. And so eventually, yes, we're going to be transitioning to the lab-made everything, and you're going to have to deal with it or fucking starve or enslave an animal, right? You've been enslaved your whole life. Why would you enslave an animal? To feed you. If we can do something that's different, and if you have an issue, if people have like allergic reactions to synthetic food because they already have predisposed issues, you're supposed to adapt to not only the food supply, but also your environment. And people aren't adapting even to their environment. I mean, even with all the organic food that was made from an animal, they still can't eat it. or they have, if you have any issue with any food, then yeah, it's you, it's not the food. And so yeah, so my dog is going through her own shit, you know, and all that. And so anyways, and so I'm just gonna let her go through her shit, but I actually bought some pink salmon in a can, and I took some of the leftovers and put them all together, like sweet potato and a little bit of spaghetti with no sauce on it, so some noodles, and a little bit of chicken with a little bit of balsamic vinegar and a tiny bit of spices. And I added some of the high protein Alpo or Purina, but I took some of the fish sauce and covered it, so because she doesn't like the high protein canned Alpo or Purina, so I covered it with some of the fish sauce or the fish oil, and with some of her crunchy dog food, and I mixed that together. And so, you know, I mean, she's got to go through, okay? And she's got to eat, of course, a diverse food, and she's just got to deal with stuff. So that's the thing that you guys have to understand, that no matter what, you got to deal with your issues. And so anyways, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, and I remember I had coffee this morning, okay? I had 4 shots of espresso. So when I was writing last night, because my husband was, you know, was doing the fishing stuff and doing all the stuff, I was writing, I had to figure out how I was going to set myself free from APA format, MLA. And what is APA format? See, when I was writing in college at JFK University, and I'm going to psychology classes, okay? And so when you're writing, that was like really my first, well, besides Diablo Valley College, I went there for a few months. I didn't even stay there long enough. And then I got a loan and went to JFK that was out of Orinda, California at the time, way back in the 90s. When you had to write a paper about some historical philosopher, you had to write in APA format. So that is the American Psychological Association, or APA writing format. And it's the most widely used formats in writing academic papers, particularly, of course, I'm sure, in science, behavioral science, biological science, whatever. And so that right there should tell you the American Psychological Association wants you to write in a way that is going to be peer reviewed. You have your bibliography of people who've already programmed themselves, are programming new students, and have then taken on programming from prior academics who have a very specific intention. Even though you might change the names and change the elements and all this other stuff, the outcome and the intention is the same. You're supposed to be cured. You're supposed to get back in the game, stay within your programming, which is like the Jungian archetypes. If you have an issue of trauma, then you go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist and either get drugs or do talk therapy or have somebody. Like, I've been to psychologists where it was either dealing with my family back when I was a young kid, or when I was going through a hard time in Walnut Creek, California, and for some reason I thought that I had to figure out how to say thank you to the nurses that saved me in Vietnam with Operation Baby Lift. Jesus. And so then she recommended to me, when I was just giving her some background of my childhood, but not too much, I mean, it was just so jumbled. I didn't really know what was going on with me, but I was just having some issues. And so I saw a psychologist, paid her $50. She did a whole sliding scale, paid her $50 a week for about a month. And she was like, oh, well, here's how I can help you. Because I talked about being adopted and whatever. And she's like, okay, well, why don't you go to this website called Community, which is COME and then UNITY.com, and they have a lot of stories about Operation Baby Lift babies, and then you can go and look and see if there's anyone there that you can connect with and feel like you have some kind of community that you're not familiar with, or that you know is in your background, and you can find some connection to a group of people that you probably weren't connected to. Because I was disconnected from everybody in Silicon Valley and my whole background, and so I wanted to find something and also just come to terms with some stuff. And so I did find an author who wrote about her times in as a nurse bringing the babies over here, and she's out of like Minnesota, and her name's like Leanne Tiemann. This Must Be My Brother. That was the book she wrote, and I actually bought the book, and it was about just her adopting a baby and her times. It's been a while. I've actually lost the book over time. And so I did talk to the author and got some closure, whatever I needed, and so I was able to move on. And that's the short-term therapy. The whole Freudian talk therapy, which I've been doing for the last 6 freaking years, it's a long-term thing. You know, Freudian therapy is when you're talking, doing streams of thought, but you have an analyst analyzing whatever you're saying and then making their own meanings and connections. And so then you're not really left with developing your own thought process because somebody else is guiding that whole situation. And so that's why I tell my Agility crowd is that if you want to hear yourself and make connections and develop develop something different, whatever it is, I don't know, come to terms, hear things that you can then understand and whatever, then you do that through listening and videographies. You can tape yourself, you tape your own sessions or whatever, okay? And you're not bringing anyone in that's going to influence how you're thinking and feeling or trying to give you a meaning to something. Because that's the thing with writing APA, when you're doing a bibliography, you have to stay within a very tight constraint that if whatever you're saying doesn't get confirmed by all the past scientists and the present scientists, then it's irrelevant. It is not considered anything worth, exploring. And then that's how the science community and academia laugh people out of their associations. And that's why Ted Kaczynski was probably pissed, because he probably had something that went against the grain. And even maybe that he was part of experiments or he was bucking the system, and then all the academics came down on him and made him question his thought process, and then he went crazy. And then he turned into the Unabomber. Now, I'm not doing that, okay? Because I purged all my demons. I had my own issue with academia because I had a mother that was high up in academia, okay, in the sciences field. And so I bucked every system. So that's why when I said, oh, I want to go to UC Berkeley, and she's like, you ain't material for UC Berkeley, honey. And she was right. I was not material for UC Berkeley. I didn't know what material I was for. So I was material for the community colleges. And then the next college after JFK was so it was DVC, JFK, and then it was City College of San Francisco, which I met a lot of different people, hung out in San Francisco, was part of that whole culture, going to coffee shops and studying with other people and helping those with ESL, because there's a lot of Chinese students, foreign students that were there. And I did go to China when I was in that college, and I had my friend from my anthropology class help me, guide me in China. And so I stayed like 3 weeks in China and learned that culture. And luckily, I survived coming home because I didn't have her to translate. So I remember when I left my bags in between between Guangzhou and Hong Kong, when we were crossing the border into Hong Kong, I left my bag on the bus, and then I was pulled aside because I was talking to some Algerians. They were Muslim, and I know they were pulled aside by the Chinese guard there. And they were like, well, why did you leave your bag on the bus? I'm like, I didn't know we had to bring our bags to go through their own customs from this point to this point. I just know that you did that when you're on the airplane, but I was on a bus, so I figured I'd just leave my bags and then we'll come back. But no, you had to bring your bags and everything go through, and they checked everything. So luckily no one planted any drugs in there, because I could have been in a Chinese prison. And so there's a lot of growing up when I was in San Francisco. And then after San Francisco, then was Chapman University, where I learned organizational development. And that's when I was going to school with people over there in Sacramento that were part of Intel and Microsoft. And so that's where I learned the organizational development and also the computer, I would say programming, but like more of the business process engineering, doing the spreadsheets and learning how to be a leader of an organization and team building and all that stuff. So, even though I don't have a degree, the people that I connected with, the boyfriends I had in the past that were really smart, postdocs, out there in UCSF, doing all of the protein docking, so you understand that there is that component of how do you merge proteins together. I mean, my whole life has been the education, and so it was non-traditional. And so when I'm trying to write something that's for a tradition in a traditional format, and then you're supposed to have a bibliography of people who are not going to agree or won't even have the research there, then that's where you get stuck and you're like, shit. So then for my Jilly Juice crowd, okay, that do have new ideas, that don't want to be laughed out of those associations because you're not writing for those associations because they're diametrically opposed, then you have to preface. You have to preface that if you're going to recharacterize meanings that were applied in the sciences field, okay, then you have to realize that those that have developed those constraints and limitations and bibliographies, you have to then emphasize that they are the ones that caused the problem. Okay? If you're going to write about something that is an issue and they're the ones that developed all the formats, then you got to say they're the ones that developed the problem. So if you're saying I'm going to redefine the word pain, redefine how we deal with symptoms, redefine everything, even politics, religion, and science, and then they're the ones in college developing the very limited framework for you to work within, then you're going to say, well, they're the ones that caused the problem of cancer, disease, chronic illness, and autoimmune disorders. And so I'm not writing to them, so I'm not going to follow your bibliography. I will do double space, I will do 12-point font. I will have some kind of introduction on some level, but it's still going to be non-traditional that eventually at some point will merge into the traditional once they do their research after I have called them out. Okay? And that does take work. That takes knowing the system. That's working within the system to change. That's what the leftist Marxists did. The Weather Underground, they infiltrate themselves into the academia, where then you're all like, oh, I want to get a college education. And it's pounded into you. It's pounded into me. Well, the reason why, because it's a programming. But if you don't go there, then you what? You go to a trade school and you flip hamburgers, or you learn how to cook food. And so you're going to be more of like I don't say servant, but you're not going to be a mover and shaker and be anything that's going to warrant a Nobel Peace Prize, a Nobel Rest in Peace Prize. And that's fine. So if you want a Nobel Rest in Peace Prize, you have to be highly educated, Harvard, Yale, and that's major programming. And they do destroy some of their students that want to free think. And so that's why then the traditional publishing world is based on the academic, limitations. And so that's why you didn't get too much free thought before the internet, before people started realizing that they can work outside of that club, that exclusive club, the associations. But you have to lay the groundwork of why you're bucking the system and still say, I'm not trying to destroy the system. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. But I think now we're at a tipping point where everything that was done in the medical holistic system is now caused so many issues. We got to redefine how we're doing stuff. And you have to do that intellectually. You have to do that intelligently. You have to do that in a way that is still honoring those before you, like doing 12-point font and double space and all of that, and kind of give some kind of cohesive format, and also reference, say, hey, if for example, if energy can be used to calm somebody down in the energy healing world, then energy can also cause someone to be riled up. And so then presenting that if something is done on this end of the spectrum in the energy healing world, then something can be done on this side of the spectrum, where then it's quite the opposite. And so it's really teaching people how to think. And that's hard, because you have to know how you think and how you operate and how others operate. And you got to be so aware of what somebody else is thinking and what they're feeling and where they're coming from. So that way you can even address what they could be questioning within your monologue, and so that way you're not leaving people with more questions. You've answered them because you know your audience, you know what people's assumptions are. Okay? And so I learned the American Psychological Association APA writing format. And so I never learned the MLA, the Modern Language Association, and I'm not, it's probably the same thing, but on a different scale, different level, because you're still having to get peer-reviewed articles and things. But there are certain things, yes, that I will cite, the credible sources, that if it does support something, and I'm saying that needs to have some kind of reference, then yeah. But if it's something that I'm putting out there that has not been, supported by the peers out there, then I'm going to say this is, in my opinion, this is how I'm going to change. Because there's not going to be anything that says that pain is so great, because how you support it. Now, pain isn't great, but it's how you support it. So then I said, bibliographies are also a type of controlled programming. It's an idea or meaning. It's not state sanctioned. If an idea or meaning is not state sanctioned, it cannot be or won't be considered as relevant or possible. And so that's, so that's the introduction of how you're going to think about this book. And then those who are also writing at some point, you can use anything that I put in my book. You can use anything. I won't sue for plagiarism, because you have to set the stage first before somebody reads it. You have to understand we're going outside the exclusive clubs. Or else you be in the exclusive club and die in the system, okay? So you must establish reference points, or else people will make inaccurate assumptions about you. Oh yeah, that's happened a lot. And so if you want the freedom to evolve, you must appeal to the masses why and how they are jailed. And so when you allow religions of politics, religion and science dictate the world, dictating your world, limiting your ability to evolve, and also forcibly make you apply meaning to perceived problems and perceived solutions, it is like an 18-year-old asking the government if he can go outside and play with his friends. And the government says no because it's raining outside and getting wet will change your programming. And we can't have that. And that is how it works. That's why you get so much intellectual abuse from people when you say, hey, salt is good. There's no reason to lessen your sodium chloride intake unless you want to pass away someday. And people are like, well, you're supposed to pass away, and I don't want to feel any energetic response of waking up my immune system. Okay, but we can't assume everyone's going to think that way. Okay? And so, it's okay to change the programming and redefine what salt is and how it's not dangerous. But let me tell you, it's been characterized as dangerous because the medical holistic system has set you up not to want to feel energetic evolution. Okay? And so, that is a programming in of itself. And so if they say, well, you should only have this much salt intake for this, then they also the opposite. You can have as much salt as you can take in water, and that isn't overdone, right? Because if you do so much salt and water, then you lose substance. You got to eat, and so it's all balanced. But you really can't tell someone how little salt to take or how much salt and water to take. You have to understand what the salt and water is doing and why. And then you have to make the choice. No different than when people do all these different supplements. It says recommended daily dosage, but what is that referenced upon? You can't make universal assumptions that one, is going to work or not work. And so if someone is so totally obese and they want to have some kind of, I don't know what people expect on these supplements. I don't know how they're working. And so the supplements industry is such a scam. It really is. And so that's why the pharmaceutical grade drugs have dosages, and it has to be administered by a doctor because people's body mass indexes are different. People have conflicting issues. They have other drugs that they're on that would counteract what they're doing or have a real chemical explosion. And so when you think about it, the pharmaceutical drugs are safer, right, than the supplement industry and the natural remedies industry, because you don't know what the hell you're doing. You're causing more antibodies to grow inside your body and attack you. But I mean, that's also with the pharmaceuticals, but at least, you'll get dosed properly, assuming that there isn't other things going on, and you know how that goes. And so anyways, with the programming that's going on, we also have to look at the video games out there, and that's also another programming. And when you think about Silicon Valley, let me just switch to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is the hub of the tech industry. They engineer society, your thought processes, the cultures. They engineer your body, bioengineer everything. And so when you think about the video games and everything computerized, which is a great thing, it is an engineering. It is a type of programming. And so some of you are into the video games, and I'm not, who you are. The type of video games you're attracted to is programming you. And if you have predisposed issues, they will turn you into the characters that you are looking at and, merging with on a daily basis. So if you're playing Fortnite, you're playing World of Warcraft, you're playing, your Mario Brothers and the Pikachu stuff. I mean, I'm looking at all the different characters, the avatars, like out of Japan, And a lot of those, the people in Japan look like Pikachu. And they're all into the avatar stuff. And they start looking like the characters that they are playing on their video games every day. And you're like, oh my God, there is a programming there. And so when you have psychopaths who are playing all the shoot 'em up games and all the war games out there, and even the simulation, the pilot simulation, you can learn how to fly a plane. You can learn how to hurt people with these video games. They say, oh no, it doesn't have any kind of, impact on a child or even adult. Oh, hell yeah, it does. They're images. Just look at the, what's his name? Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, when he was shown those violent images of Vietnamese women being tortured by the GIs out there during the Vietnam War, and then he has his own issues and whatever else, those images stayed within him and it programmed him into being a psychopath. And so, yeah, we're going to have so many psychopaths in our society because of all the violent video games on kids who already have predisposed issues and already have cognitive issues, who are already angry at people, place, and things. They've been abused their whole life, and then they want to get back with those that are triggering them at school or whatever. And so then we have developed psychopathics. Oh, yeah. Is anything about Charles Manson? Let's go back to Charles Manson for a minute. Because I already mentioned Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. I already mentioned Ted Kaczynski being tortured by the academics, and he was a brain. And so now with Charles Manson, now we hear certain things about his background, that he was in reformatory schools and all that. But I think there's also another programming. Because even though he may be so smart and you think that he learned everything from the prison system, I think there's a lot more going on in his background. And they definitely instilled a lot of intellect and told him a lot of things. And then also thrashed the hell out of him. And he probably bucked the programming too, but after all that thrashing and LSD and everything else that he was doing to his own minions, it turned him into a cult leader. That's why I'm also mentioning in my book in the beginning, let's define what a cult is. And here's my definition of a cult. And so I'm going to have the beginning really set you up how to think and where I'm coming from. So that way when you're reading stuff, you're not like, well, shit, this isn't APA approved. There's no bibliography for this thought process. It's not being confirmed by this peer review article. Cite your citations. No, I'm going to set you up in the beginning that the information that I have is definitely, anyways, I lost that train of thought, but that's okay. But yeah, so Charles Manson was definitely, I think there was some programming that he was bucking the system, okay? And then his the programming from being thrashed and the LSD and then all the intellect that he learned from wherever then turned him into what he was. And that's why he was so revered and had a following. And that's right, cult. That's right, cult. That's where I came back from. So that's where the whole cult culture. And then so I set you up in the beginning of my book defining what culture and cult is. So that way you understand what's my definition of a cult is when you have fringe groups that are focused on sex, love, drugs, and death. And every culture back in the 1960s and 1970s was based upon sex, love, drugs, and death. Okay? And we're not in a commune. We're all going through this process individually, and we're not focused on sex, love, drugs, and death. And so then, that's how you're going to be set up in the beginning of my book, so you understand where I'm coming from. And you're not automatically thinking I'm a cult leader. Because no, I'm not a Charles Manson. Oh yeah, yes, I was programmed in Silicon Valley. The hub of innovation. Okay? And that was from 1940 and on. The engineering of our society. And they are the foundation of the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 70s. And even before that, because they took information from the Germans. And we had the Nazi, scientists, whatever. And so, Operation Paperclip, I guess. And so then, before Silicon Valley became whatever, it was all orchards. They were the fruit basket of the world. That's why you had Cannery Row in Monterey Bay, Cannery Row. People were picking, we were the fruit basket of the world. And we distributed fruit all over the world. I mean, I remember where I lived in Saratoga. and diverse Saratoga and Cupertino on Prospect Road, there was apricot trees. And we used to kind of, go and pick apricots. It probably wasn't okay, but we picked apricots. Okay? And there was even some, apricot trees at the Saratoga Library. When we went there to go watch Freaky Friday and the movie stuff, on the afternoons during the week. Sugar, do you want to go? Okay, sure. Okay, lay down. Lay down. It's okay. And so, so Silicon Valley was a huge fruit basket, and then they turned into vanilla homes, Mediterranean style homes in the tech industry. And so now we're developing goddesses and gods and influential people and seeding the world. We are seeding the world. And with people's programming. Because everyone that went, a lot of people in my high school class and junior high school class, a lot of them stayed, in the Silicon Valley and went back to their high school and taught the kids and whatever. And a lot of them went everywhere. They're all over the world. Okay? And so Silicon Valley is the hub of the tech industry, bioengineering, engineering, chemical engineering, and they also advocate startups, running your own business. And so then you have all the venture capitals in Silicon Valley. Okay? And so Silicon Valley is a lot of money because that's where the engineering comes from. Chemical engineering, behavioral engineering. And so, so now that I've been in it and I understand the history of now, really, and it's not like I didn't know the history, but bringing it all together and in referencing from my point of view and then where I'm going with this as far as the JJ world and indefinite life and potential immortality and then innovation and then why it is I got such backlash, because the intellectual abuse, the intellectual programming that was instilled in the influencers on YouTube and Facebook when they're all programmed by their college or by the mainstream media. Okay? And they're told, well, if you don't have, bibliography and peer-reviewed articles to support your thesis, then it's not relevant, and then you can go bash someone for thinking opposite. That's what the college system has done. It has forced people to stay within a very tight limitation. And now I'm breaking free, and I'm giving my JJ crowd an opportunity to break free if they understand. Okay? But you got to understand the writing that you're doing must have some kind of cohesive sequence. You got to know the basics of introducing an idea. You got to know the basics of the font system and spacing. Okay, so that right there is a skill that you must learn. It's not just free writing, because you have to show that you have some kind of credibility, that even though you are still bucking the system, you're not promoting chaos, that you have some kind of organizational way, because you are writing to people who have been trained to look at things in an organized way. And so your brain has to be organized for you to then train your brain how to work in a specific traditional, but then non-traditional. And you have to be able to articulate why you are veering off of some areas that you don't want to be traditional, that's going to be non-traditional. And so that's for my JJ crowd. If you haven't been trained in the writing styles, in the writing formats, because when you do get a publisher and they're like, okay, well, we want it in this type of, this, it's a lot of work, and you might have to pay a lot of money if you want someone to edit. Okay. And so, if you want me to just send you a real quick, no, because that's a lot. You're going to have somebody edit your stuff, because they're going to have to, that's what I'm saying. If you don't have the skills to do it yourself, then you're going to have to pay someone to edit. And that is because you got to learn how to set up the formats, how to set up, the margins, how to figure out the fonts and italics, bold and then hearing back. And so if that isn't your forte, then you're going to have to take a class in that before you write for me. Because that's a lot of work for me, right? You got to develop yourself. If I were to go take on someone that does that, no, honey, this is your venture. If it might take you a couple years to get to that point, it might take a couple years to get to that point. Taking a Word class, like a Microsoft Word class online, or go to a class, whatever, that'll help you out to understand you know. And so some of you are going to be starting from scratch, as you know, as far as learning the computer program, Microsoft. So then you can upload and you can convert documents to PDF and all. Yeah. Okay, so I don't want to scare anyone. Okay, but I mean, and so having a little bit of college behind you, having, a little bit of technology behind you is going to put you in a good stead. But that's professional development, that's self-development, and it's worth it, because then that's how you can make changes within the system. Okay, so you don't want to be outside the system. The leftist Marxists, the real aggressive ones back in 1960s, 70s, they had it right. If they're going to go make changes, they have to be the one to develop and get in and change the system from within. And that's what I'm doing. Okay? But let me tell you, a lot of pushback because of the programming, the intellectual abuse and the intellectual programming that goes on. So those of you who are in the video games world, it is programming you to stay in a specific loop. And I have to address it because it is relevant, especially if you want to evolve. I want you guys to evolve beyond being cute, cuddly, or a psychopath, or being pretty, or being all that. I want to see some intellectual maturity. I want to see some physical maturity. I want to hear the maturity. And if, and so, yeah. And that will come through in video. You saw me mature on Facebook the last 6 years. For me, just not speaking to the camera, to then speaking to the camera, to then just go off on tangents and lose my train of thought and cover subject matters that I had no familiarity with and made mistakes and had to go back and retract, say, okay, I fucked up here, I made a mistake here. And I keep correcting myself and I keep listening to myself. And so whenever I do a video and I'm teaching myself, I'm also going through my own Sigmund Freud catharsis of streams of thought and analyzing what I'm saying and hearing stuff and making connections. Then when I listen back, I then also say, oh, I missed something here. Oh, I need to add something here. Oh, I need to correct something here, and be like, okay, here's my main takeaway. What's the whole point of this? And so then you get so many different modalities in just one live stream. And that's a lot of juggling, but you're seeing the benefit of it. But it does take work, and it also having an audience and not blocking anyone from your live streams, and just taking the feedback, whatever it is. And then if you don't like the feedback, or you're not wanting to deal with the feedback, then you have to then say, okay, I don't want any feedback. I don't care if you don't believe me. If someone wants to correct you and it's from their perception from the medical holistic industry, I mean, you can try to retort back and be articulate and not be mean. But if you don't have the words for it, then you're going to react with aggression or emotion. And sometimes you have to do that. So you have to block people that you really can't respond to correctly if it's someone that you like or that you respect. So you just block them and whatever. I mean, I don't know. But then there's people who are going to try you. They're going to keep just poking you. And those are around too. And then you block them too, because this is not for debate. But if you find that you have misspoken, or that you said something that wasn't correct based upon the dictionary definitions, I mean, when I bring in stuff, it's all dictionary definitions, already dictionary definitions for stuff. I'm not going to be referencing the dictionary for every single word I use. And so if you reference something that is not correct per the dictionary definition or the formula, then you go back and correct yourself on another transmission, and to show that, yes, you can see your own mistakes. If someone said, no, that's not what this is, and you go and look it up, and then, you can articulate. And so that's the thing. You want to have feedback from people. You want to hear people's, not just my feedback, because, you got to be able to take a little bit of criticism, and eventually a lot of criticism if you have something really interesting. Because who knows, when you're doing these live streams, you might have an idea that you never thought of, but then you make the connections and you're like, oh shit, here's a new idea. And I don't know what your backgrounds are. I have no idea what you've been trained in. And maybe you haven't been trained in anything at all. Maybe you were just a housewife for many, many years. We're taking so many different pharmaceuticals. You're pissed off. And then you had a dream to be a marine biologist. Or you had a dream to be an accountant or whatever. And so then you're taking these classes. And as you take these classes and you're learning the concepts behind accounting and marine biology and all that stuff, and then you go on Facebook Live and act as if you were a teacher, that's how you teach yourself. That's what I'm saying. There's so many ways to use these live streams, and you get your confidence and you look at yourself as you are morphing into the person that you want to be, and then you're not being blocked by the antibiotics, by the surgeries, by the intellectual abuse, by those that are out there. Let me tell you, when you go to college for whatever reason, they're going to have their own way of doing stuff. And even marine biology or any kind of sciences, they're going to be recommending antibiotics. They're going to be recommending surgeries. And you may not agree with it and all that, and they're going to have their own thing about pain and suffering and abuse and that term and all that. And you just got to let it go. Just learn. And this is where eventually I'm going to write about that when people finally do graduate from their high school and they go to college, you're going to learn the system's way of doing things, where everything's about pain mitigation and programming and all that stuff. You learn that way, but know that that's how they do things. But you know there's another way, and if your way and the system's way can find a way to meet in the middle, and then you can change from within. But you got to learn. I learned a platform. Let me tell you, I learned this system. I was in the system, of course. I was actually in the juvenile system. I was in the system in Silicon Valley. I've been in the system in all the different testing and all that stuff. And then I'm bucking the system, but I'm bucking the system from within the system. And that is an art. And so let me tell you, some of you will just need to get through your predisposed issues. But there's a lot more that you will be encountering down the road, and that you're going to want to use your brain on. Because let me tell you, when your brain finally deals with the actual pain, the headaches, the body aches, everything else, and then you're listening to some of my information and you're reading stuff, and then you're coming to deal with all your stuff, like your predisposed issues, your psychological issues, you're going to want to put your brain to something. Your brain's going to be craving information. It's going to be craving math, English, science, social studies, English, physics, chemistry. You're going to be craving to want to know about the periodic tables of elements. You're going to want to know what this sign means. You're going to want to know everything. And then here you go. Here's the internet. Here's Google. Here's Facebook. And then you find something you want to talk about, and then and that's when the world is at your fingertips, and it's like you're being reborn again, but now no one else is programming you. You're programming yourself. And maybe you might have something different to offer. Not another regurgitator that just memorizes, the party line along with terms and concepts, but then you can change the party line and you can substantiate it and still honor those before you that set the platform without completely bucking the system. But let me tell you, it's going to take work, because you know how I've been like, fuck all those scientists. They're all cold-hearted motherfuckers, and you'll go through that process. Let me tell you saw how I went through that process, where, a lot of scientists are cold. When you're doing experiments on animals and people and humans, and you really have to remove your empathy, you have to remove a lot of the emotions when someone is in pain or someone's hurt. But like with my husband, and he does his fishing, and I'm just like, oh, those poor fish, and the hooks are going into their lip, and I'm just like freaking out, like not really freaking out, but I was just like, maybe we shouldn't fish. But then, what my husband's doing is he actually is making the fish smarter and making them work for their survival. I mean, they have their predators. Fish do have their predators, but humans are also predators. And so then they also sharpen each other's survival skills. And my husband has to then maybe, when the fish become too smart about the lures that they're using, then he has to go and buy more lures that are different. Okay? And so it's a whole psychology, even in the sports gaming world, or the game hunting, fishing game world. But not everybody likes it. I mean, we're like, why would you shoot that animal? It didn't do anything to you. Well, you got to keep the population down, and then, it comes up again, and that's why there's tags for hunting and that. But then you can translate that my husband is sharpening the survival skills of the fish, and the fish are sharpening his whatever, you know, and then he has to go and regroup and figure out how he's going to go about, you know, outwitting the fish, and the fish have to go about outwitting the fisherman, and it's a whole thing, and so I get it. I mean, I understand it, and so we're all going through our own programming, and it's painful. Okay, it's fucking painful. But I now am advocating that people don't put their hands on other people, that we don't intellectually abuse other people or bully them. But that will come out when people have been bullied themselves. And so when they were victims at one point, they'll turn into a predator. And that happens all the time. Okay? And so that's why you have to kind of understand why I was getting attacked so much, because a lot of people out there, everybody out there has been bullied by somebody, by the system, by their parents. And they've gone through their own painful programming. And so when someone challenges their programming, they're going to go and do what they usually do. They're going to go and bully them and talk smack and be mean. And then you might be like, okay, I'm going to counteract with that, but I'm not going to lob any more grenades. That was when I was then feeling and having the things come up against my own programming and not feeling valued for having a different thought process. And so I lobbed grenades right back. But that's the thing, is that the evilness or the vindictiveness that comes out when you're being attacked is how you protect yourself, but you don't want to let that get out of control. You don't want to destroy someone with your protection. And that's a very fucking valid point. Oh my God. Because when you're overprotected, okay, in your body, as far as your immune system and the antibodies, it'll destroy you. Those are the monsters that cause the cancer disease and whatever and death. And so when someone's out there trying to protect the world, right, the saviors, that's where the Walking Dead got it from, the saviors, those that are pounding the gavel and making fun and causing everyone to go and attack somebody else, then the attacks turn into a destruction. Then the protection of, when you're trying to protect everyone from salt and sugar and GMO and all this other stuff and lab-based stuff, then you become the destroyer. The protector that is trying to save you then actually destroys not only themselves, but they destroy people around them. And so there's a fine line between protecting someone and destroying them, but people don't know those boundaries. And they actually turn into what they have been an activist against. They actually turn into it. And that's what you're seeing in politics, religion, and in the science world. You know, they're all about God and Jesus and everything else, and then he's the best thing, he's the most wonderful thing, he's the most proper thing, he's your protector, he's your savior. And then upon that converging everybody else, then if you don't believe, then they want to destroy you. And so, but then when your bodies, the antibodies in your body that are protecting you from the invaders, well, they're not destroying. Well, either they convert, either whatever gets in that is an invader gets converted by your immune system from bad to turning good. But if you allow all the bad to come in and overtake, then all the good that could have been turned bad. So that's why you have to have an immune system that when you feel the invaders come in, you have enough protection that the ones that do come in get converted to be a good guy, not a bad guy. Okay? So you can take all the bad guys out there and convert them to be a good guy, but it's still a balance because you have so many good guys that can turn into bad guys. So it's a balance of how you convert energy. And how do you articulate that? Oh, that's difficult. And so that's what I'm in the process of doing. But I have to set the stage that no, I am not coming from where I'm going to cite every single source to support my opinions. Okay? That now we are really innovating and developing and evolving the system and still give people a choice. Because what did I write that I think, you know, I wrote something here. I'll just read this. Okay. So I have Silicon Valley Secrets, and I actually have a chapter called Silicon Valley Secrets. And that is just explaining Silicon Valley and the Rosicrucians. And so right there, it's right to the point. Silicon Valley, you know, I give the history of Silicon Valley, Northern California, and then the also what they were before, yeah, and then what they were after 1940. And then the secret is the Rosicrucian Museum, located in San Jose, California. That's the Illuminati that people are like afraid of. The Illuminati aren't bad. You just have to understand what they're doing. They're trying to help you, but people don't want to be helped. And so when they don't want to be helped, they destroy. Well, if you don't want to be helped by whatever, then you don't destroy either. Okay? And so that's when I also, say that, yeah, the Rosicrucians are the Jewish mystics, they are the Christian Gnostics, and they are the Hermetics. And that's, Egyptian, and that's the Greek and Egyptian background, okay? And that's the sacred geometry. That's all the New Age stuff that you see out there. So every religion out there is based upon the Rosicrucians. I don't care what it is, whether it's Jehovah's Witness, whether it's Christianity, Catholicism, whether it's your energy healing, throwing crystals at each other and doing the chakra manipulation, it's all Rosicrucian. And so those that are against the Illuminati, you are the fucking Illuminati. You just don't know it yet, but you've been divided and conquered. Okay, and then you think that what you're an activist against is a good thing, but no, you are the Illuminati. You are the Rosicrucians. Any religion you have, any belief system that you have come to know through the internet or through friends or family was based upon the Rosicrucians. All right? And so then you can't destroy yourself. You can't. And so there's that. And then I do the who, the what, the when, and the how. And I don't know. I might say the non-traditionalist, traditionalist. And so I do break down the who, the what, the why, the when, and the how. And then how to read this book. And so there are, oh, that's right, I have quotes in here too. There's a few quotes. Oh, that's right. That's the who, and then the quotes. So how to read this book, and then the quotes. Okay, a few of them that I said. And then I put what is a cult. And in the end of that, what is a cult? The Jilly Juice journey is an individual process sharing data to bring awareness to the masses. And the premise is not based on sex, love, drugs, or death, therefore not a cult. It is a new culture based on respect for life, defined by intelligence seeking its own meaning of existence or non-existence, which means that if you want to pass away, fine. I'm not telling you have to live. If you're in so much pain and you have a religion like Christianity or whatever, and you want to go to your Savior, I respect you. I like who you are today, and I respect where you want to go. But I also need to question every single religion out there and your belief system and give you a choice. And if you still choose to your Christianity and you still choose to go to your Savior and you still choose to take all your different drugs and remedies and whatever else, okay, that's great, but you have a choice now, and you can define your existence or non-existence, you yourself. So so J Juice is a new culture based on respect for life, defined by intelligence seeking its own meaning of existence or non-existence. Okay? And so I'm not saying everyone has to live, because we don't want cancer to live. We don't want disease to live. We don't want all that shit to live. We don't want to have all that craziness. Okay? And so we can't say that we're all for life or all life, because not all life is good. Some life is destructive and deadly. All right? So in my opinion, the cults are extremely fringe groups living in communes, advocating sex, love, death, and drugs, requiring the FDA and or law enforcement to step in and regulate to make sure the sex, love, and drugs do not lead to premature death. Okay? And that's what I see in the cults. When I look at the Manson cult, when I look at Waco and David Koresh and him having, relations with children, when I see all the different cults that came out in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, they're all based upon the sex, love, death, and drugs. And you have all the yoga cults and all the communes that are playing with their music and they're love, 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 and they're doing the cannabis and the ayahuasca. And then you're like, oh, wait, this is 1960 all over again. And so that's why they're cleaning the petri dish, because we've developed so many different cults based upon sex, love, drugs, and death. And people are destroying themselves out of existence. And there is no respect for life. And yeah, the poor children are not going to survive a lot of these things because they have been set up correctly. Their parents are immune to evolution. They can't evolve. They're stuck in their politics, religion, and science, or just completely spaced out. And they're stuck in their programming. And okay. And you still respect them for who they are, what they have to offer. You study people. You understand them. And then you know that even if you try to say something, it's gonna hit a wall like the water hit the mucus wall when I was dealing with my co-infection, where I'm drinking water and it just didn't feel like it was penetrating anything. That was the monster I was dealing with. And when I freed that monster through my mucus, so this morning I woke up and I did have to cough out a bunch of mucus. Am I sick? No, but that's what you have to do now. Now that your body is finally working the way it's supposed to, and your immune system at some point is going to work the way it's supposed to, you're going to think, oh, you're sick every day. No, you're in an environment that has so much in it, and you have now a protective barrier that is going to let certain things through and then let the body convert it to be something for you. And anything that can't be converted is going to be stuck in your throat, and you're going to have, and it has growth, yeah, because you can feel the monster growing in the back of your throat, and then you got to hack it out. And I hacked it out. And you have to go, and then, and it doesn't sound, and let me tell you, it sounds gross. My poor husband has to hear it, but he doesn't do it until the monster's grown inside of him. Okay? And so you'll study people around you. You'll study everyone. Then you realize where I'm coming from. You've got to let that monster free. And with kids that are growing up in this society, that monster is growing so fast, and it is deteriorating them. They may not grow, they may not mature or grow up long enough for that monster to destroy society. They might not survive their younger childhood, and some will and some won't. But we'll see. What is it? The next generation after Generation Y is Alpha. So you have the aggressive ones. So that's the Alpha generation, right? They're the leaders. They're the ones that are like aggressive, and because they've been dealing with all this crazy stuff and the violence and the stress. Then you have the Betas, where they're being the Beta generation, and their parents are gonna really come down on them. You already see it. You see what's going on with they're saying that there's corporal punishment in the classrooms. They're bringing back corporal punishment. So you have all the alphas, they're going to be hit by the corporal punishment, and then they're going to raise their kids to be betas. They're going to be like cowering and submissive. Oh, there's so much programming in this society. It's insane. And so you have to know how this programming is and not fall for it. And set yourself free. Doesn't mean that you buck the system on the outside. You work within, you do little changes, and you then create your own world or evolve your own world that isn't reinventing the wheel. Because I think, what did I say? Something about creation and evolution. If you do not evolve from your creator, you are a clone. Okay? So I said better to have an ounce of opportunity than no opportunity at all. If you do not evolve from your creator, whoever it is, whether it's your parents or from Jesus or from God or from a test tube or from the scientist, or from your adoptive parents, if you do not evolve from your creator, and that's in quotes, you are a clone. And so you can always reinvent the wheel. You can always create another religion against something else. I mean, that's what creation is. Creation is reinventing the wheel. Evolution is taking the platform and evolving it and still honoring the basic platform, but you're adding more to it, making it better, making it palatable, and it's evolving with the times and with the environment. Evolution has been mischaracterized. Okay? Because we allow death in evolution. But when you are releasing the mucus, you can say that your things in your body are dying. No, they're being released. When you are releasing that little protein memory that was stuck in the back of your throat, yeah, it's going down into your sink or into your toilet, and it's going into the sewer system, and the sewer system is either going to destroy it or convert all the proteins. And that will then all the byproduct of the sewer system then gets shipped off to different places, and then it's going to go and get composted somewhere and go right back into the cycle of life again. And so you're not killing anything in your body. You're not using antibiotics. You just have an immune system that now is working so efficiently where it doesn't have to turn to anti-life stuff. You know, once it leaves your body, it's out of your hand. You have no responsibility once it leaves your body. But when you're bringing in antibiotics in your body, then you are causing a war. But when you're coughing stuff out, you're not causing any anti-life stuff. So if you do not evolve from your creator, you are a clone. Okay, clones, hey, clones do amazing things. Clones are a dime a dozen out there. Just look at all your different groups and associations. Clones, clones, clones. Even though they have different DNA makeup, not literally a clone, but people who adopt the same thought processes, the same belief systems, travel in packs, and whatever, clones. And so at some point, you got to evolve from being a clone. If you want. You don't have to, you know, whatever. Okay, so this book is going to be traditional, non-traditional. It's going to really set the stage for how you read this. I'm going to have to really bring in a lot of stuff, and I have to speak it, and then, you know, it'll give you guys then a jumping off point to figure out how you're going to, what your life is going to be from this point forward. And some of you will not make it through your predisposed issues for whatever reason, because the programming was too ingrained in you. And that's okay. Honor it. Do the best you can. And those of you that have the opportunity to deal with everything because your life is set up for it, I wish you good luck. Okay? Because it ain't easy. All right, bye.